It's almost a cheesy question, Gary, but you got to ask it. Knowing what you know now, if you went back to that preceding months before the first gift gathering that you and David Tabira are like, okay, we've got this great program. We're going to bring people in from around the world. We're going to teach them the latest on human movement science, chain reaction biomechanics, all this stuff that you guys, pioneered, to be honest, which is amazing. What's one or two things that you would have added back to that first one that weren't there?
I like cheesy questions because I ask a lot of them myself. So it's always good to have other people ask a cheesy question. But I don't think that's that
Thank you, mate.
cheesy. I think as you get older, you do that. You reflect and you go, okay, what might I do a little different? And then can I apply it now? I can't go change it. I always tell people if we went back to the beginning and we planned this, we would have screwed it up. If we would have said, here's what we want to have happen, and it's all going to be all about community. I remember our very first gift gathering. Doug got up and said, I have a sense that we're all going to learn a little bit about the body, but I got a better sense we're going to all learn a little more about ourselves. And if we can accomplish that and then kind of have love and respect for the person sitting next to us, it's going to be, and he made this comment, it's going to be all about community. And even then, I didn't know what he's talking about. I'm thinking, yeah, these are some amazing people here. Well, that very first gift gathering, when people left, Dave and I were crying. And it was the weirdest thing. I'm looking at him and he's looking at me. I said, what the heck? Who died? And nobody died, but these really amazing people who are dedicated to helping other people just spent 4 days with us. And now they're leaving and we're sad. I mean, it was sad. I'm thinking, wow, this might be a little more powerful than I think. And it's strange about every gift gathering, not about when we have to close it and kind of let everybody go back to where their homes are. We're sad because the power, you said it perfectly, the power of community. As far as something that we might change, that's a tough one. I think what we do now is we allow people to take gift online only, or they can take gift and come to the two gift gatherings here in Adrian. So if you live in Hong Kong, or you live somewhere and you say, wow, I'd love to get this information, but man, I don't have the finances or the time, to go and hang out with Gary and Dave and Adrian. I think if we would have thought about that a little earlier on, but I remember the first time we did not allow people to come to gift because of COVID. I was extremely disappointed because I knew the power of showing up. You know that too. I mean, that's the cool part. And I'm thinking, man, this is not what we wanted. You just can't create the same thing online. However, that particular year, the COVID year, where no one got to show up, when people got online and just basically said, here's what gift is meant to me. I mean, Dave and I again looked at each other and says, but they weren't even here. Yeah. I think their interaction with other gift fellows and understanding that the whole goal of gift is to give of ourselves. The whole goal of gift is to love on people. The whole goal of gift is to find new techniques where we can encourage each other. I think I read somewhere on your website that, especially working with kids, understanding winning and losing is something, but understanding effort is everything. And when I read that, I go, yep, that was very well put by yourself. And so our effort just to help people, that's kind of all we care about. So I think I would have made it a little more accessible, but still encourage people to show up.
So then I guess the next question is, why you, Gary? Like the industry, the movement science, exercise science, physical therapy, osteopathy, prior to GIFT or prior to the Gray Institute? When did you start the Gray Institute? We're talking 1978, was it?
Yeah, we actually started the Institute right around 1980.
1980, yeah. Okay. So until then, we had still a growing industry. but many would say, and myself included, that you sort of changed the direction. You certainly like, and been influential across many of the movement sciences, and personal trainers, strength and conditioning, physical therapy, osteopathy. All of these were the people that come to GIFT. So when you looked at your industry back then in 1980, let's say, and you went, you know what, I just feel that the way that I look at the body and the way that I look at movement is slightly from a different hat almost. I'd like to share that, and here's why. Like why did you do that? Like what were the gaps that you saw missing?
Well, first of all, that question is one of the best. I've had that question thrown at me a number of times, but the way you just framed it was the best. Because it really was, again, it wasn't purposeful. So what I want to do is I want to kind of influence the direction of human movement. And I tell people this, but they always think I'm fibbing. I embellish things, but I try not to fib. So I got into physical therapy school with a real low grade point average. And it was only because back in the 70s, they were looking for males. And so my interview was, it looks like you're about a 2.0 student and you're a male. Is that correct? And I go, yeah. It says, well, you're in. And so, and back then you only had to go 2 years pre-physical therapy and 2 years of physical therapy. And I was blessed with some amazing professors. I was blessed with a lot of really cool classmates. And the bad news is I spent 2 years clowning around. But I was smart enough to know what questions they're going to ask on the test. And so when I took my state board, I was fortunate I passed it. But I remember my very first day, 2 days after I took my state board, where I was working, actually here in Adrian. This is the first place I came to. I realized what I didn't know, and it killed me. I don't want to sound like I cry all the time, but I went home and I cried. I went back to my apartment that I got here in Adrian, and just, I said, I can't believe these people are counting on me, and I don't have a clue what I'm doing. These people are in pain. These people are debilitated. These people have neurological problems. These kids need help. This person needs to get back to work. And here I am, not a clue what's going on. And what was interesting is that the job I got, believe it or not, I was the director of a department that saw about 110, 120 people day one. And as students, we learned that you probably should only see 3 or 4 people a day. And all of a sudden, we're seeing 110, 120. And the other interesting thing I think was critical to my seeing things a pinch different is that the 3 therapists who were there before me, who had just quit, had gone to the board and got approval for the hospital to buy a thing called an isokinetic Cybex. Now we'll just call it isokinetic, so we're not just picking on Cybex, because back then Kincom had one, Biodex had one, Cybex had one, and it's the knee machine that measures torque. And I can remember seeing that in school and intuitively going, I'm sorry, that didn't make sense to me. And people would say, what do you mean? I said, I've never seen a sport where you just sit on a table and make your leg go back and forth. I said, I'm just not sure that makes
Leg
sense.
extension, yeah.
Yeah. And so I told the administrator, I said, I'm sorry, if you spend $40,000 on it, all I'm going to do is hook TheraBand around it because it's really heavy and it won't pull the TheraBand. He laughed.
Expensive anchor.
Yeah. He thought that was funny. I'm thinking, no, he goes, well, how can we be a sports medicine facility without that? Because back then, that was everything. They owned all our journals. They had all the research, and even though the research was terrible, when you own the research, you can make it sound and smell anything you want. And so I convinced them to, instead of spending $40,000 on a piece of equipment that I would not use, to spend $40,000 on allowing me to become educated. Because I told them, I said, I apologize, but I didn't learn much in school. And I certainly don't know anything about the human movement system. And that's my job, to get somebody to move better. And I have no clue. And so I was really blessed to have an unlimited budget to go to every seminar known to man. And I still love going to seminars. So I would go to a podiatry seminar. And back then, if you weren't a podiatrist, you couldn't get in, but that didn't bother me. I just wrote Dr. Gary Gray / podiatrist and make sure I had the right amount in my check, so as long as they got the money, they really didn't question it. I went to a lot of osteopathic meetings. I went to a lot of chiropractic meetings. I went obviously to a ton of sports medicine meetings, even courses that isolated, what the SI joint does. And it became very obvious to me very early on that there's a lot of people that knew parts of the body, but nobody knew how to put it together. If I ask a podiatrist, what would you do with the hip in order to take care of that plantar fasciitis? They would go, we get to the ankle and we stop. So we don't really care what happens above that. Well, we should care. And then people that were talking about ACLs back then, I go, okay, what should we do to the trunk and the hip and the foot to make sure we prevent an ACL tear? And they're going, Gary, you're not listening. It's a knee problem. And I go, I don't think so. When I see somebody move around, it looks like all those parts are connected. And most of my patients came in with feet and with a pelvis and a trunk and some shoulders. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, I never learned how to put this together. And so I searched far and wide to see if somebody was kind of putting what we call the movement system together. I couldn't find it. And I thought, well, this might be fun. I'm going to give it a shot. And it was just a matter of observing. When the foot did that, I saw the hip do that. Okay, that was easy. When the foot did that, and the hip did that, and the other shoulder did that, well, that's pretty easy. And as you know, when you just kind of get the understanding and step back, it's pretty easy, but you have to let yourself see the whole body. We have to see the neuromusculoskeletal system as one. We got to see mobility, stability, endurance as one. We literally need to see the human being, mind, body, and spirit as one. And so we step back and go, okay, let's not take this too seriously, but let's take it really serious because our patients are dependent upon us. Our clients want the best. That was my initial pursuit. And I think I'm only about 3% there. I think there's so much more, and time's running out. So I'm working harder at trying to understand it. But part of being gifted with maybe some insight, I think there's a responsibility to teach. And I've always had the passion of sharing. And so I would ask my profession if I could actually teach at some of their seminars, and they said no. First of all, they didn't know me. Second of all, they already had a list of speakers. So we just started our own. And as you know, one of the very early ones was when the feet hit the ground, everything changes. So that was a fun seminar because we all learned how to work with the foot up on a table with some TheraBand, and we learned the biomechanics of the foot and what they called back then open chain. And I noticed that when it hit the ground, everything changed. Everything. What joints do, what the nerves do, what the muscles do. Sometimes it's the exact opposite of what we were taught. But the foot really was the tibia, which really was the knee. And the knee really was the femur, which really was the hip. And the hip really was the other hip and the pelvis because that's the back. And so it's like, okay, is it possible that a lot of dysfunctions aren't where you see it? That's a compensation, can be somewhere else. Is it possible where pain is not where they point, but there's something causing pain to be there? And so since that time, that's been our pursuit to try to put together, and that's why we call it chain reaction biomechanics. What's a chain reaction?